He was a CEO, powerful, respected, untouchable. At least, that's what everyone believed. But one night, as he slid into the backseat of his car, a little girl's trembling voice cut through the silence. "Don't say a word. They're watching you." What could a child possibly know about betrayal, greed, and racism? Far more than he ever imagined. That warning would unravel a secret so dark. It nearly destroyed his life and exposed a truth this world still struggles to face. What did the girl see that no one else dared to notice? Jonathan Miller wasn't just any CEO. He was a kind of leader people admired. A self-made man, running one of the city's fastest-growing companies. To the world, he had it all: success, respect, and power. But behind the polished glass walls of his office, Jonathan carried something heavier, a quiet burden of being one of the few black executives in a space dominated by men who looked nothing like him. Every board meeting, every handshake came with unspoken tests. He'd grown used to it, or at least pretended he had. On this particular evening, Jonathan believed it was just another night. He signed off documents, nodded goodnight to his staff, and walked toward his car, unaware that something or someone was waiting to change everything. And when he opened that door, the last thing he expected was a child's voice whispering a warning that would shatter the illusion of safety he thought he'd built. Jonathan froze when he heard the little girl's whisper. Her eyes, wide and filled with fear, darted to the darkened office windows above. "They're watching you," she repeated, her voice barely audible. Jonathan's first instinct was disbelief. She was just a child, maybe 7 years old, her clothes ragged, her small frame shivering in the back seat. But there was something about her urgency that sent a chill through him. Within hours, he began to notice things he couldn't ignore. Strange looks from his colleagues, documents missing from his office, deals collapsing with no explanation. And then, rumors, whispers that Jonathan's success was nothing but luck, that he didn't belong at the table. It wasn't the first time he had felt the sting of racism in corporate America, but this was different. This was targeted, deliberate. The little girl, Jasmine, insisted she had overheard things, conversations not meant for her ears. She told Jonathan about his own business partner and assistant, their plans to ruin him, to paint him as incompetent and reckless. They wanted him gone. And in a world where black men in power were already seen as exceptions rather than the norm, it wouldn't take much for people to believe it. Jonathan brushed it off at first, convincing himself it was paranoia. But then came the evidence he couldn't deny. Financial reports altered, emails that seemed fabricated, colleagues suddenly avoiding eye contact. And behind closed doors, board members muttering words like unfit, untrustworthy, and problematic. They weren't just plotting a corporate takeover. They were exploiting every stereotype, every bias, to make it stick. The weight of it all pressed on Jonathan. He had fought too hard, broken too many barriers, to let it all collapse now. But the odds were stacked against him, and he knew the truth. Once suspicion takes root, especially against a man like him, it spreads faster than fire. One mistake, one wrong step, and everything he had built could vanish. Still, one question haunted him. How did this little girl know so much? And why had she chosen him? The boardroom was packed. Suits lined the table, eyes sharp and cold. Jonathan had been summoned for what they called an urgent review of his leadership. He walked in steady, but inside his chest pounded. In front of him lay a stack of altered documents, each one painted as his failures. A fabricated trail of missing funds, mismanagement, and negligence, all designed to prove one thing: that he was unfit to lead. The accusations came swift and brutal. Words like reckless, unstable, and untrustworthy cut through the air, each one echoing the ugly stereotypes Jonathan had fought against his entire life. He tried to speak, but was silenced. He tried to explain, but was dismissed. They didn't want truth. They wanted a spectacle. And in that moment, Jonathan realized it wasn't just a betrayal by his partner and assistant. It was a test of how quickly a black man's credibility could be destroyed when the system chose to believe the lie. But just when it seemed like the walls were closing in, the door creaked open. Jasmine, the little girl who had warned him, stepped forward with trembling hands clutching a folder. Inside, recordings, notes, undeniable evidence of the scheme. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Then the truth hit like a storm. The faces around the table shifted from smug to shaken, from certain to cornered. Jonathan's voice finally broke through, strong and steady. This is what you tried to bury, but not today. The betrayal had reached its peak. The lies had been exposed. Yet in that charged silence, one question lingered. Would the system correct itself, or find another way to erase him? When the truth came out, Jonathan's name was cleared. His partner and assistant were exposed for their lies, arrested for fraud, and stripped of everything they had tried to steal. For the first time in weeks, Jonathan could breathe, but victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like survival, because deep down, he knew the attack against him wasn't just about money. It was about power, perception, and the dangerous ease with which people were ready to believe the worst about a black man in charge. And then there was Jasmine, the little girl who had risked everything to speak up. She wasn't just a witness. She was a reminder. Jonathan later discovered she was a granddaughter of a cousin he had lost touch with, a child left adrift by a world that never gave her a fair chance. So he made a choice to take her in, to give her not just shelter, but family. But Jonathan didn't stop there. The ordeal opened his eyes to something bigger than his own fight. He founded a program for vulnerable children, kids like Jasmine, who were too often silenced, overlooked, or left behind. What began as an act of survival became a mission for change. Jonathan's story proves that racism doesn't just whisper in back rooms or live in statistics. It thrives in silence, in the willingness to believe lies over truth. But it also shows something else, that even in betrayal, even in injustice, there can be a spark of hope. So the question is, when faced with injustice in your own world, will you stay silent, or will you be the one who speaks up? And if stories like this move you, if they make you think, reflect, or feel something real, then don't forget to subscribe, because here, we share powerful stories that the world should never ignore.